Listen to this episode if you have your product-based business based on Faire or Etsy right now, and you're getting a little worried about what that means for the security of your business. This is a conversation that I love to have, and I feel like I've been having it more and more lately. And it's because websites like Faire or Etsy, even Amazon, are becoming more and more saturated. And so many people that have grown their business on these platforms that have been very lucrative for a long time are starting to see their sales decrease. This is actually a coaching sessions episode. This was somebody that sent me a question that basically said, Maddie, I've been making around $500,000 a year in my business for a while, and they were on Faire, fully on Faire, mostly grew on a wholesale capacity. And over the last few years, their sales have started to steady and plateau, and they really don't know how to grow it because their marketing has no control over it. It really is just where are the views showing up on their website. And I've had clients like this from Etsy. I've had clients like this on Faire, on Amazon, where they got kind of started in the early stages when there wasn't as much saturation on them, and now they're super saturated. So what would I do in this situation? Why is this a very vulnerable place for you to be in as a business owner? And what would I recommend moving forward with from here? Before I dive into this, my name is Madison Page. I am the host of the Business Growth Podcast. Welcome. I teach product-based business owners how to become category leaders in their industry so you can stand out and sell out your business and live all your wildest dreams. This is a conversation that I really love to have, and it's one that honestly, my opinion has changed on it quite a bit over the years, and it's only because the more and more businesses that I have seen be absolutely wrecked because of an algorithm change on Etsy or an algorithm change on Faire or saturation on some of these platforms, that if you have an over dependence on a platform that you do not own and you do not send people to make sales with, your business is at a very vulnerable place. They're at a very vulnerable opportunity because if Faire goes out of business, if Etsy goes out of business, all of a sudden you don't have a business. All of a sudden, if you have a team built out and you've done all of this, it all comes crumbling down. And it doesn't even have to go out of business. It just has to be some algorithm changes or the saturation hits or sales start to decrease. Because if you do not have control, that's really the key word here is control, is that right now you don't have full control over your business. And so what we really see with this is that you need to basically be able to build a secondary platform that you have full control over. This is why having a D2C sales channel is going to be your best bet. It's honestly kind of building almost backwards a little bit. And it's great because Faire and Etsy and Amazon, and I don't want to say this is Amazon in general because Amazon is a really great sales channel, but if you have an over dependence on Amazon, you're in a very vulnerable state as well. So I do think it can be in this conversation. Normally, people build awareness. They build brand awareness around their business. They build product awareness. They build their own community and they build their own sales. And then we start branching out into these other sales channels to see how can we get some of this revenue. But what often happens is that people are doing that and D2C takes a lot of time comparatively because you need to build your own traffic. So you start to see some growth on the Faire, the wholesale, the Etsy side. And that's kind of where all of your attention goes, is all of a sudden you just pour all of your attention into those places, which I can understand why you would do that. You go where the money flows, you're optimizing where the money flows, but then you find yourself in this vulnerable state. So what you really need to do is you need to take back control. And it is going to be easier for you than if you were to be a business starting from scratch, but it is still going to take time. You're not going to shut down these other platforms. It's still your money. It's still profitable. It's still where you are building your business is home. What we're doing is we're starting to put our attention into a D2C sales channel. What that usually means is starting to focus on your marketing. First, I would say is let's figure out what your branding is. That's going to be number one. What is your brand? What do you want to be known for? Because a lot of times on these platforms, you're not really building a brand. You're just selling a product because it's more of a search engine. They're typing in tallow butter, and then on Faire, you're up against all of these other tallow butters. So what we need to do is we need to say what makes you different than everybody else that's on Faire, but how can we say that your product is different? We need to start building your brand, your messaging, what your differentiator and what your business just needs to be known as that's different than what everybody else is already doing out there. Then we start building the marketing channels. Marketing channels is where you're starting to get brand awareness, where we're starting to build community. Those are the two next major steps. How can we get some of that messaging out there to reflect your marketing and your differentiators? And how can we start connecting with people that would really care about this product? And then we build out the D2C sales channel, which is your website. Of course, we want your website live. It's probably already live. You just don't really have traffic going to it. But really the key part here is how can we build out that channel? Branding, marketing, website, emails, I would say, are kind of like the next major step that you need to build out so you have a really solid sales funnel. Now, once we have that figured out, now we want to try to optimize because you've already had eyes here. You've had eyes, you've been in contact with a lot of customers, you've had people buy from you on Etsy, you still have people buying from you on Etsy or Faire or any of these other places. How can we use that as almost a top of funnel strategy to get them over into your D2C sales channel? So you really are building, I wouldn't say from scratch, but you're building still from a foundation that isn't really there. And that's why this is a really scary place. So if you're even a beginner business owner right now and you are unsure if you want to start building on Etsy first, I know a lot of people do that just to kind of like vet the business idea. Just please try to build your D2C sales channel alongside of it because it can take time to build it out and to figure that out that way as well. And you would rather build them simultaneously. So when people find you on Etsy, you're still building your community. You're still getting them over to your Instagram. So first, we build out the channel. First, we build out the sales system. Then their next step is how can we utilize the sales system that's already working on Etsy, Faire, any of these other platforms, and actually use it to funnel really just into your marketing so we can stay top of mind. Because the real problem with these platforms is that you don't own their emails. You don't have any communication with them once they receive your product. Even with Faire, you don't have communication with your customers at all. You're not getting any feedback. On Etsy, they are so tight-lipped about how they can actually buy from you directly. They're very stingy with it because they want these people to continue to spend money on their platform. Something I want to note here is you do have to understand that you are in a very different playing field when you're growing D2C than when you're on these platforms. What that playing field is now you're selling your brand. Before you were just selling your product and your packaging and what that looks like. It is a very different messaging shift. What makes your product unique? What makes your product different? Why should they care about buying from you? Why should they buy from you? Those are the questions that they're asking. Whereas when they're on Etsy or when they're on Faire, they're looking for something very specific and different in those two categories. Like on Etsy, somebody says, I need to buy something for my mom for Mother's Day. I'm typing in certain things that I think my mother would like on Etsy. The other day, I bought my mom for Mother's Day. I bought her, those hand painted paintings of me on my wedding day, my grandma on my wedding day, and my mom on my wedding day. I went on to Etsy knowing that I would be able to find somebody super quickly for that. What did that look like? I then scrolled through all of these options of literally dozens of people that are doing the exact same thing. For some reason, I felt more called to one of the photos over the other. I went in there, I checked out all the details, and that was the person that I checked out from. Now, if I were to be a part of your D2C sales process, I'm not comparing you to everybody else that's around you. How I'm thinking of it is I'm saying, I follow this girl on Instagram that has talked about this for a while. Let me go and look at her Instagram. And then I would check her details. And then I would say, is this somebody that I do want to work with? And then I would go to the website and go through that process. So it looks very different. And so you have to also adjust how you're selling. Etsy, Faire, all of that. And Faire, you're selling to business owners. It's a B2B sales channel. So they're looking for something very different. They're just looking, do you fit the vibe of our boutique? Do you fit the vibe of what we're trying to create? So that's a lot more of a packaging game, right? So now that we're over on the D2C side, it's a totally different beast. If it's okay, I'm going to interrupt this podcast for 30 quick seconds to let you know about the Founders Cafe. It is my completely free podcast community where you can gain access to bonus resources, gain access to me and free coaching calls, as well as build a network of other business owners just like yourself. Business ownership is a lonely game, and we might as well build community, build a network, and have a space to collaborate. We can bring this conversation and all the other conversations we have on this podcast over into this free podcast community and make this a two-way street. I would love to answer your questions there, connect with you, see you on our next free coaching call. Click the link in the show notes and you'll find the link there. If you have sales and you have cash flow, I would almost recommend you hiring out a D2C, e-com, social media management, something like that, if that is not your strength. Because as of right now, of course, for the person that offered this was making around $500,000 a year. I have people at this stage come to me very often. I bet I've had a dozen clients that have been right around this stage on one of these platforms is right around $500,000. And it seems like that's kind of where they plateau very often. And they start to want to build out this D2C sales channel. But just understand that if you are busy doing what you're already doing, going back to square one on creating a marketing strategy can feel incredibly frustrating, because you really do feel like you're starting with a fresh business and you have a big business. Like, you're already making great money. You already have some good cash flow coming in. So it might just make sense for you to hire out a social media agency that also works with an ads agency, because you already have some brand awareness. People already know you a little bit. On Etsy, brand awareness is really hard to build, because I want you to think right now of all the purchases you've made on Etsy. Do you know the brand name of any of them? I know none, not a single one. I don't buy on Etsy a ton, but if I need something specialized, that's when I go to Etsy if I don't know a business owner that's done it. And so you do have a little bit of brand awareness just because you already have kind of a foundation on these other platforms. What you want to basically do here is utilize that brand awareness in ads and top of funnel and try to get people over to your social and be like, oh, I have seen this. Oh, wow, I've seen this at that boutique that one time. Or, oh yeah, I have, seen this company on Etsy. Or you can utilize your reviews and your testimonials to try to build some of that to show that you are in demand elsewhere, because that is a big step in the beginning, that your business is really solid. You just need to build that authority from the very beginning. But I do think it would probably be more helpful for you, because it can be very frustrating and feel like it's not a good use of your time if you have a $500,000 a year business to then be trying to post on Instagram, figure out the strategy there and get 900 views. It just doesn't seem like a good use of your time. It is a very good use of your time, but it might not feel like that. And I honestly find that hiring out a social media manager, if you don't have the time, might actually be very helpful for you. And of course, if you don't want to hire a social media manager, you do need to learn the strategy. You need to understand it. Otherwise, it's going to take you a very long time and it's going to be incredibly frustrating. So I just wanted to kind of cover that. I think this is a really good question. On the flip side of this question is, if you haven't scaled on these platforms and you might have a few sales on there, that's fine. When do you know to actually expand onto them? Now, first things first, I think the biggest conversation here that I haven't touched on is the fact that these platforms take a very large percentage of every single purchase that is made. So, on Etsy, they're taking 20 cents and whatever the percentage is, if you're running ads, if you have all of these other fees, if there's shipping, whatever, but they take a very large percentage. On Faire, you're already discounting by 50%, and then they take another 10 to 20% off of that as well. And so you also have to think about these D2C sales being full profit sales. For once, that is a very large piece of this. So if you are already making D2C sales, it can make sense for you to go wholesale, which is kind of like boutique retail as opposed to legacy retail, trying to get into Target or any of those. You can go that way, but you need a very good profit margin on your product. I wouldn't ever try to shift these other platforms to be your main driver of the main revenue holder, because again, it's out of your control. I think they're very good secondary income streams, but we want to build D2C as an engine and as a growth engine. If you're going to expand for scaling per se, it needs to really make sense with your profit margin, with also the focus of your business. Like, where do you want your business to be in 3 to 5 years? Where it actually might make sense for you to try to go more large scale legacy retail if you've already scaled on D2C sales. Now, if you're just getting started, I understand wanting to cast a wide net to try to see where you can get some traction. You can get really good traction very early on in your business on Faire. I really, frankly, don't love Etsy. I think Etsy has really started to kind of take advantage of small business owners a little bit with what's necessary to actually be successful on their platform. They want you to spend time every day. It's kind of like you're just feeding this beast of you having to add more listings and you having to edit things and stay very active in the platform. It's not a passive sales system anymore. It used to be where you can kind of add things onto Etsy and it is passive sales that came in, but it's not really the case anymore to fully optimize it. I would rather you fully optimized D2C sales, and we can expand onto Amazon when you already have brand awareness. We can expand into legacy retail when you have brand awareness. Maybe Faire if you have a profit margin that does allow for it. And we can kind of look at what actually makes sense. But when we talk about scaling sales channels, it's all about where do you want to be as a business owner? What are your ultimate goals? And what actually makes sense for that? It depends on what your ultimate goal is. So that would be my first question there. Now, I just want to say that these platforms, none of them are absolute no's, but you just need to be able to have control over your business. I want you to think right now how it would feel for you to be able to say, we're a little short on sales this month. Let's run a quick incentive and get an extra $5,000 in to cover all expenses. I want you to be able to feel what it would feel like to be able to say, we're going to launch a full new collection and we know we're going to sell out of it within 12 hours. We're so excited to launch this, and it actually happens. That is what you can build in D2C. There are plenty of brands doing $100 million a month D2C alone right now. That is borderline unheard of in history. Even since, the e-com bubble kind of started, people are making so much money just D2C alone before scaling. So don't feel like you have to scale sales channels in order to actually be successful in business. I would rather you build a ride or die community and an online digital e-com sales channel that literally prints money, that you have such solid sales and cash flow before we scale and we expand into retail. Now, of course, if you're CPG, if you're food and bev, that might have a little bit of nuance behind there. But in general, I want you to have awareness behind your brand prior to scaling. So this is where, going back to the rule of one, you can pick one sales channel, you can pick one major hero product and just build that out, and you can make a lot of money in the product world. So don't feel like you need to overcomplicate it. I hope this was helpful for you. I hope that this answered your question. You can submit questions if you want me to answer one of your burning business questions. You can join our Founders Cafe. It's our free podcast community where you can connect deeper with me. On every podcast episode, you get bonus resources. We do coaching calls every month inside of there. You can click the link in the show notes and join us there. I hope this was helpful for you, and I love you. I'm rooting for you. I'm in your corner always, and I will see you in the next episode. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Business Growth Podcast. We put out new episodes every Tuesday and Friday. So if you love this one, make sure that you're subscribed so you never miss a conversation. If you want more conversations with me and other business owners, make sure that you join our completely free podcast community, the Founders Cafe. The link is in the show notes. You can get bonus resources, access to free coaching calls, as well as connect with like-minded business owners like yourself. Make sure that you rate and review the podcast 5 stars, share it with a friend to keep those conversations moving, and come back every Tuesday and Friday. I'll see you there.